A burger-loving hitman, a philosophical gangster, and a dance-crazed mobster walk into a bar. You won't believe what happens next. So these guys think we're illiterates or something, because why did they start with a dictionary definition of pulp? I mean, I didn't know the definition before seeing this, but still. Anyway, after that quick English lesson, we see a guy and a lady, Ringo and Yolanda, at a diner. They're talking about their profession, which is, armed robbery. Oh yes, this lad is proposing they rob this diner. He's really making his case. And boom, his partner is sold. So sold that she says they do it right now. So they embrace, say their I love yous, and it's showtime. It's quite literally showtime because we're just now getting into the movie proper. Now we see these guys, Vincent and Jules, together in a car talking about the differences between America and Europe. Apparently Vincent was in Europe recently, Amsterdam to be precise. Anyway, they stop to take some revolvers out of their trunk and head into this building. As they head into the elevator, Jules is telling Vincent about a guy named Antoine Rockamora who fell victim to their boss, Marcellus, because apparently Antoine gave Marcellus' wife, Mia, a foot massage. And just that foot massage earned him a trip off his balcony, down 4 stories. According to Jules, Antoine developed a speech impediment from the fall. Well, Vincent thinks Antoine should have expected that something like that would happen, but Jules thinks that was an overreaction from Marcellus. They get into a little argument over that, but they eventually put that aside and get down to business. They get to this door. Jules asks for the time and Vincent says it's 7:22 a.m. Jules says it isn't yet time, so they move on down the hallway and continue their argument. But they don't even spend a minute there before they head back to the door. In front of the door, Vincent says something about Marcellus asking him to take his wife out and show her a good time. Jules is suspicious, but Vincent says it's nothing. Anyway, this dude now comes to open the door and the men walk in like they own the house. Jules introduces himself and his partner as associates of their business partner, Marcellus Willis. There are like 3 guys here, all looking very nervous, but Jules focuses on this guy, Brett. Jules is here talking about the most random things while Brett is shaking in his boots. Jules asks them what they're having for breakfast, where they got it, all of that. Bro, please just tell me why you're here. Thankfully, he finally gets to the reason he's here, but not before eating Brett's burger and drinking his Sprite. He heads over to the guy laying on the couch and asks him where they hid the stuff. The guy at the door quickly tells him like, bro, just take it and leave. I feel you, bro. But Jules yells at him. He wants to know, but it's not him he wants to hear it from. So what do you think he does? He asks the guy on the couch who points to the exact same place. Vincent checks there and brings out a box. There's a glow from the box, but we don't see the contents. Jules asks Vincent, we happy? And Vincent says yes. Brett now asks Jules what his name is, and Jules says his name is Pitt, and immediately adds that he's not talking his way out of this. But Brett says he just wants to apologize for things getting so, you know, messed up with them and Marcellus. But in the middle of his pleading, Jules takes out this little toy and claps our little guy on the couch. 1 down, 2 to go. At this point, Brett is nearly crapping his pants, but Jules makes it even worse now. He moves closer to Brett and throws the table aside while bombarding him with questions. Basically, he tells Brett that Marcellus doesn't like to be messed with, and he even quotes the Bible to him before he and Vincent empty their magazines in this poor man's chest. Next act, Vincent and Mia, Marcellus' wife. This scene opens with Marcellus bribing this boxer, Butch, to fix his next match. It seems Butch is a failed and aging boxer, so of course he accepts the bribe. While they're still talking, Vincent and Jules comes into the bar in these ridiculous clothes. I preferred you guys in the suits, man. What the heck is this? Anyway, after Marcellus is done with Butch, he calls Vincent to come over. Before then, Vincent and Butch have a little face-off, but it doesn't look like something too serious. Butch, however, seems focused by how chummy Vincent is with Marcellus. We now cut to Vincent meeting with this white dude, Lance, who's showing him his substances and also casually uses the N-word, like he's PewDiePie. Oh, he's lucky it wasn't Jules who came to meet him. He would have been in a body bag already. Anyway, Vincent gets his substances and enjoys them in Lance's yard, and then drives off while being zooted. Don't try this at home, kids. Vincent now arrives at Mia's house. She left a note for him at the door. In the note, she says she's getting dressed and she tells him to come in and make himself a drink. He goes, but as it appears, Mia's actually not getting dressed. She's in this room watching Vincent through the security cameras and communicating with him via the intercom. She tells him to go make himself a drink and she'll be down shortly. And would you believe what's keeping her so busy upstairs? Eating salt through her nose. But like she promised, she's indeed down shortly and they leave together. They arrive at a 1950s themed restaurant called Jack Rabbit Slim's, but Vincent is not really feeling it. He'd rather just go get a steak, but she's the boss here. You do what she says, so he follows her in. This high fella nearly gets lost, but Mia calls out to him and they go and sit in this Chrysler she reserved. I won't lie, this actually looks fun. Don't judge me. Anyway, they make their order and while it's getting prepared, they get talking. She talks about a pilot she clapped, and how she goes to Amsterdam once every year to chill out for a month. Man, I hate being poor. Anyway, as they're talking, their order comes, and damn, now I want a milkshake. After some time, Mia goes to use the bathroom. She might not have used the bathroom for what you and I would have used it for, but bottom line is, she used the bathroom. She gets back to meet her food on the table, so she starts digging in. While they're eating, Vince asks her what she thinks about what happened to Antoine. She tells him how Marcellus didn't actually throw Antoine out of a 4th-story window because he gave her a foot massage. In fact, Antoine never even gave her a massage in the first place, and she doesn't even know why he was thrown out the window. She says the beef is between her husband and the dude. Anyway, it's now time for the twist contest, and Mia volunteers herself and Vince. Of course he doesn't want to do it, but she insists, so what can she do? They get on stage, carefully take off their shoes, and get to the dance floor. And they do got moves, and I'm really digging the game phase. Of course, they won the trophy. I didn't watch the other guys, but I'm sure they deserved it. They now head home with Mia holding the trophy, and they continue dancing. Mia puts on some music and starts dancing while Vince heads to the bathroom to give himself a pep talk. He'll definitely be needing it, because it's seeming like some chemistry is brewing between these two. I mean, she's even wearing his coat. But I'm sure Vince would not like to find out what getting down with the boss's wife would incur on you, hence the pep talk. But does the pep talk work? Here's the thing, he doesn't even get to use it. While he's taking his sweet time in the bathroom, Mia finds his substances in his coat pocket and eats it with her nose. She thought it was Coca-Cola, but it's the other worse one that starts with an H. Immediately, she starts bleeding from her nose and passes out. Vince comes out and sees her in that state, so he immediately puts her in the car and speeds off to Lance's house. He practically crashes into Lance's house and drags her out. Lance doesn't want this baggage, but he eventually offers to help. Together, they drag her into the house and give her an adrenaline shot straight to her heart. Man, the way he drove that needle straight to her chest. I thought it was going to extract her soul, but it actually revived her. Now they're back in the car, and Vince takes her home where they pledge to keep this a secret. They seal that with the one thing that makes every contract binding, a handshake. But before Vince leaves, Mia shares a joke with him. It's from her pilot friend. The joke is not funny, so there's no laughter. Relatable. Vince just blows her a kiss after she has turned around and makes his way to the car. We now cut to a throwback to when Butch was little. He's watching cartoons on TV when his mom comes in and tells him he has a special visitor. It's Captain Coons, from the prisoner of war camp where his father passed away. Apparently Coons was a very good friend of Butch's dad, so following the demise of his friend, he decides to bring Butch a wristwatch which was passed down from Butch's great-grandfather to his father. Coons says Butch's dad hid the watch up where the sun don't shine for 5 years, and after he went to be with his ancestors, Coons himself hid the watch in his own anatomical secret place for 2 years. Then he hands over the shitty watch to Little Butch. As soon as Little Butch grabs the watch, Big Butch wakes up and goes out for his fight, the same one he was paid to fix. But as it appears, he didn't fix it, because we can see him jumping out of the window with a briefcase and running away. My dude didn't wait for Marcellus to throw him out of a window. He did it himself. I respect that. Anyway, the search for Butch is on. Marcellus tells his men to scour the world for him. Meanwhile, Butch is in a cab with this pretty lady who recognizes him and tells him that the man he just fought against has now ascended to the afterlife. You know what's crazy? The name of the now deleted boxer is Floyd, but this movie was made in 1994. Anyway, Butch and his Colombian driver start talking and getting to know each other. Her name is Esmeralda. Butch stops at a payphone and makes a call to someone named Scotty, and from this conversation, it appears that, after the odds went through the roof, Butch double-crossed Marcellus and bet on himself, and went on to win the game and win some insane amount of cash while at it. Now that's quite the twist. His super fine driver now drops him off at a motel and he pays her both for her driving services and her secret-keeping services. I sense a connection there. Oh sorry, break that connection. Butch actually has a woman and she's in the motel room waiting for him. Her name is Fabian. They hang out and he updates her on the situation of things and the danger they're in. But it seems like she's really about this life because she doesn't even fret. Butch reminds her that he loves her and he wants to be with her forever. The next morning they're talking about where they'll go once they collect their money while Fabian brushes and Butch takes a bath. After a little discussion, Butch goes off to sleep. He wakes up to the loud sounds of motorcycles revving on the TV and Fabian is still brushing. She must have the healthiest set of teeth in the whole of the United States. But then she goes to kiss Butch, who hasn't brushed his teeth this morning. Now you're confusing me. She now pushes Butch to get up and go get them breakfast. So he goes to his box to find something to wear. While he's getting dressed, he notices that his watch is missing. Yes, that same one that was passed down from his great-grandfather. Now he's yelling at Fabian for forgetting the watch, even though she's insisting she packed it. He throws a TV to the floor and yells some more before he calms down and goes to sit on the bed. Fabian, by the way, is curled up in a corner of the room with tears in her eyes. Butch gets himself together now and tells Fabian none of this is her fault. It's his fault for not telling her how important the watch was to him. Anyway, he's getting dressed to go back to his apartment to get the watch. He doesn't care that Marcellus's men would most likely be there waiting for him. He's really calm with her now. He drops some money for breakfast for her on the bed and assures her he'll be back soon. But once he's in the car, he lets loose and starts yelling again. He gets to his apartment and the watch is right there on the kangaroo, exactly where he told her it would be. He grabs the watch and of course he leaves immediately, right? Wrong. He doesn't. This guy, one of the most wanted men in the state, decides to go to the kitchen to make himself some breakfast. But while he's in the process, he notices a semi-automatic on the kitchen counter. Around that time, he hears a toilet flush, so he picks up the gun and points it at Vince. What a surprise. He claps Vince, drops the semi-automatic on the table, wipes it, and leaves. Man, he really caught him lacking. What a way to go. Anyway, Butch gets in his car, and he's driving back to meet his girl. All is well with the world. He's even singing melodies. Well, until the craziest thing happens at the traffic light. He sees Marcellus, and Marcellus very well sees him. So what do you think Butch does? Of course he runs him over. But after he does, an onrushing car immediately smashes into him. Now they're both victims. People gather around Marcellus and help him get up. I knew a gangster wasn't going out like that. Never. When the good Samaritans point him to where Butch is, he takes out his Glock and starts shooting. Immediately, Butch starts running. More like dragging himself across the street, to be honest. He drags himself into a pawn shop, and when Marcellus comes in, he pushes him down and starts pounding his face with those boxer fists. Butch picks up Marcellus's Glock and tries to finish up the job, but the shop owner, Maynard, has now stepped in. He loads up his double barrel and asks Butch to drop his weapon. He now tells Butch to approach the counter for a slap. He gets his slap and falls to the ground, and the shop owner makes a call. You think it's the cops, right? Well, you're wrong. He calls his partner, Zed, and tells him the spider just caught a couple flies. What we see next is the men strapped to chairs in the basement, 50 Shades of Grey style, and Maynard spraying them with water to wake them up. He tells them nobody claps people in this place of business except for him or Zed. And speak of the devil, cause Zed has just arrived. And would you believe it? Zed is a cop. Okay, sorry, false alarm. He's only a security officer. Maynard now goes to bring this guy they call the Gimp from a cage he was locked in. This guy's in a leather suit from head to toe, and he's also in chains. Maynard puts him down beside Zed, whose little eeny meeny miny mo helps him choose Marcellus to torture first. So they take Marcellus, drag him out back, and leave Butch here under the watch of the chained Gimp. Butch now uses that opportunity to free himself. The Gimp tries to make some noise to alert Zed and Maynard, but Butch gives him a quick taste of those famous fists, and he immediately passes out. Butch now makes his way up, grabs the keys, and opens the door to leave. But just before he steps out, the noise from Marcellus getting clapped makes him rethink. So he decides to go back to help him. He looks for a weapon around the shop and goes back down the basement with his weapon of choice, a sword. And wait a minute, they're not just clapping Marcellus, they're clapping Marcellus. Oh my goodness, such animals. Butch butchers Maynard, who's closer to the door, and then goes to face off against Zed, who's trying to pick the Glock beside him. But Marcellus has now picked up Maynard's double barrel, so he tells Butch to step aside, then sends Zed flying into the wall. As Zed is writhing in pain, Butch now asks Marcellus if he's okay. He says he's far from okay. I guess they're friends now. You know, enemy of my enemy type thing. Marcellus now wants revenge, but Butch wants to know if they're cool. Marcellus says they are, provided he keeps what happened here a secret and leaves town tonight and never comes back. Butch says it's a deal. To be fair, he wanted to leave anyway, so easy deal. Butch now leaves and gets on Zed's bike. He heads straight to the motel to get Fabian. He says they need to leave immediately so they can catch the train. Butch is trying to hurry his woman up, but she's being a softie and shedding tears because he's yelling at her. So again, he has to calm down and be a gentleman before she hops on the bike and he rides off. We now come to another act. This Seinfeld-looking fellow is holding a pistol outside the door where Jules was reading out scripture to Brett before clapping him. So after he hears gunshots, he bursts into the room and lets his own shots fly. Only that his were all misses, no hits. Jules and Vincent just quickly finish them off. But there's a little gaffe in this movie. So you see those holes in the wall which were supposed to have been made by the lad's pistol? Well, apparently, they were there even before he burst in. Moving on, Jules says they should have been in heaven already right now, and it was God himself who came down and stopped these bullets. Don't we all just love a religious assassin? Like Jules literally refuses to move on until Vince acknowledges that this was a miracle. Vince does for peace to reign, and they leave, but it's not over. They get in the car with the survivor from their little shootout, Marvin, and their conversation continues. Vince says stuff like this happens, but Jules insists it was a miracle and a message from God, so he's retiring. Vince now turns around to Marvin to ask for his input, and in the process, he mistakenly blows his mind. Literally. They now have to get the car off the road pronto, and that's exactly what they do with the help of Jimmy, Jules' friend. But Jimmy's not exactly feeling very helpful right now. He's yelling at Jules for bringing an unalive body into his house. He says his wife could divorce him if she comes and finds out, and she comes back in about 90 minutes. So Jules goes off to call Marcellus to try and get this sorted quickly, and of course Marcellus handles things. He sends this guy named Wolf. Now get this, Jimmy's house is 30 minutes away from where Wolf was when he got Marcellus's call, but this Wolf guy arrives in 9 minutes 37 seconds. Another motivation to get a super fast sports car. Obviously that's just a joke. No amount of motivation is going to be able to stop me from being poor. Anyway, Wolf rings the doorbell and he's let in by Jimmy. This guy's in a tux, by the way. A pretty interesting gangster. Anyway, they now have 40 minutes before Jimmy's wife, Bonnie, comes back, so they get to work right away. They go to check the car in the garage and then head back to the kitchen where Jimmy has made a cup of coffee for Wolf at his request. Wolf now shares the duties and the men immediately get to work. Jules and Vince are scrubbing the spaghetti juice off the car. Jimmy is getting his best linen from the house while Wolf is making some important calls. Jules obviously still hasn't forgiven Vince, and sincerely, I can understand why. But despite their fighting and bickering, they do a pretty impressive job of cleaning the car. But that's just phase 1. Phase 2 is cleaning the boys up. Wolf takes them out, asks them to strip to their birthday suits, and gives them a bath like prisoners. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is the reason they showed up at Marcellus's bar in those ridiculous clothes. They now take the car and go to dispose of it at an auto dismantler. Wolf's job is done. He takes his pretty lady out for some breakfast and leaves the boys to do their thing. Well, they also go for breakfast. You know where? That same diner Yolanda and Ringo robbed. Only that they got there just before the robbery. Right now, though, the partners are just sitting and talking. Now that the problem has been solved, Jules is less angry at Vince, but he says he's still thinking about the miracle they witnessed today. Vincent still insists that it was just a freak occurrence at best, nothing more. And to further establish his theory, he asks Jules why God would have gotten involved, and Jules admits that that's the part that still has him confused. But all he knows is that he felt the touch of God, and he will most definitely be quitting the life of crime after he delivers the case to Marcellus. And now in the middle of their now serious conversation, we quickly cut to Ringo and Yolanda just before they got their big idea of robbing this place. Now Vince gets up and says he's going to use the bathroom, and as he leaves, Ringo and Yolanda begin their operation. It's absolute chaos out there, but Vince is just on the toilet seat reading a book, unaware of what's going on outside. Ringo gets a plastic bag out and asks everyone in the restaurant to put their wallets in. Jules calmly takes out his wallet and raises it up, but he also takes out his Glock and hides it under the table. I think he's about to perform a miracle right here. Ringo now comes to Jules, collects his wallet, but he doesn't leave. He asks Jules what's in the case, and Jules just says his boss's dirty laundry. He asks him to open it, but Jules says he won't be able to. Ringo should have just left it there, man, but he pushes. Anyway, Jules doesn't do what he thought he'd do. He actually complies and opens the case. Again, that glow. We don't see what's inside, but Ringo says it's beautiful, and I believe him. But he gets too distracted by the beauty of it, so Jules is able to quickly grab him and point his Glock in his face. Jules de-escalates the situation and tells Ringo and Yolanda that he actually doesn't want to clap them. He wants to help them. You know, cause he's a child of God now. As he's talking to Ringo, Vincent shows up and points his revolver at Yolanda, but Jules manages to still get everything under control again. He tells Ringo to get his wallet, take out the money, and count it. There's about $1,500 there, and Jules tells him to keep it all, but Vince is not having that. He tells Jules that if he gives this guy $1,500, he'd clap him based on principle. Yolanda panics again again, but Jules gets things under control yet again. He explains to Vince that he's not giving him the money for free. He's basically buying Ringo's life. He's giving him the money so he doesn't have to delete him from Earth. And what do you think Jules begins to do now? He starts to quote the Bible to him, the exact same passage he quoted to Brett before he sent him to meet the authors of the Bible. That line goes hard, but he tells Ringo that normally once he reads that passage to you, that's it, you're toast. But after what he saw this morning, he has been thinking and trying so hard to turn a new leaf. He finally puts his Glock down and tells Ringo and Yolanda to leave. The couple leaves, and Vince and Jules leave shortly after too. Moral of the story? That was one of the movies of all time.